Hello, everybody. Welcome into Windy City Gridiron Radio of WindyCityGridiron.com at SB Nation. With you, as always, is Robert Zaglinski, and I'm pleased to be joined by the Bears beat writer of the Chicago Sun-Times, Adam Jahns. Adam, what's up this morning?
Robert, good morning, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. We're having some little technical difficulties there, but it's good to have you in.
Yeah, technology is supposed to make your life easier, but sometimes it just makes it more stressful. Believe me, I get it. There's been a countless times where I wanted to throw my computer out of the press box. These things get so frustrating. Real good though, man.
Yeah, more than anything betrays us sometimes. Let's jump right into it. So it's Super Bowl week. The Bears aren't playing in the Super Bowl, obviously, to beat Eagles and Patriots. But I was thinking that we would do this thing like a Super Bowl blueprint. What has to happen for the Bears to eventually be here, to eventually have the whole media circus and to play on the game on the eventual Sunday. So with that in mind, let's start offensively. There's a lot of questions. For example, on the offensive line, Mitchell Trubisky's development. If they're going to be back here, Adam, in your mind, let's start with that. What must happen offensively, like to become like a title contending team?
Well, you need to. Well, it's all about the development of Mitch Trubisky. I think everybody knows that. It's how much can he understand Matt Nagy's system within 1 year? Can he make the leap like a Carson Wentz did for the Eagles this year? Can he make a leap like Jared Goff did for the Rams this year? So all eyes will be on Mitch Trubisky and how he understands what Matt Nagy wants to do for him, what Mark Helfrich wants to do for him. So there will be a transition for him, surely, but I think he'll be better. It's in terms of building an offense for him, it's more than just the play calls. He needs to improve personnel. I think we all know that. And just going into the offseason, which is upon us, the acquisition period is upon us. You got the draft. Well, first you got free agency, then you got the draft. The Bears got some decisions to be made. They got to be aggressive in free agency. I think they got to be very targeted in the draft too. I think you have to draft a wide receiver. So if everything's going to evolve around Mitch Trubisky, you got to make sure there's things actually revolving around him. You know what I'm saying? You got to have legitimate weapons for him. Sure, Tariq Cohen will be better. Sure, Jordan Howard is there. Sure, Adam Shaheen will be better in year two. But you need receivers. You can't count on Cam Meredith and Kevin White to return to form at least right away. Sure, they should be in the mix, but you got to add to that position considerably. And you know what? You can do that in one offseason. You can make that change in one offseason. You can add to that position. I think history has shown in terms of retooling certain areas of your roster that receiver can be kind of flipped rather quickly. The Rams did it. The Eagles did it with Torrey Smith, and then they brought in Alshon Jeffrey, and it flipped so quickly, and that helped Carson Wentz immensely. So it can be done. And yes, you're going to add to the offensive line. I think you got three guys kind of set there, or at least two for sure. You got Charles Leno's got the long-term deal at left tackle, and he had a better year, Robert, than a lot of people want to give him credit for. And then you got Cody White here. You got to figure out where you want to put him. But you got decisions to make with Kyle Long. When is he going to be healthy? Do you kind of upgrade a right tackle over Bobby Massey? And what do you do with Josh Sitton? You got the team option there. So there'll be some changes up front for sure. But if you're looking at the Super Bowl teams, the Eagles and the Patriots, I think they're good examples of how you can really rework the receiver position within one offseason if you're aggressive in your approach and you're willing to spend money and you're willing to use draft capital on it. I mean, even like the Patriots, trading for Brandon Cooks, trading for Philip Dorsett, right, too, from the Jacoby Brissett deal with the Colts. It can be done. It can happen quickly. So if you're looking at the Super Bowl teams and you're wondering what the future holds for the Bears, to me, that's what stands out, how you can flip things so quickly at the receiver position.
That's actually what I was going to ask a little. We were just starting that you touched on. So Cody Whitehair, he's entrenched. I mean, he's going to be a starter either way. But depending on what the Bears obviously do in free agency or the draft, they might move him over to guard. Would you have any concerns about them doing that, but kind of like for the third straight year? Because this year he wasn't really entrenched in during injuries. He moved from center to guard. So this year, it'd be kind of another switch for him. They're never letting him really get comfortable. Would you have any concerns with that?
Not really. If they just let him stick with a certain position, I think it helps that John Fox is no longer here. I mean, that guy was completely all right with guys moving all over the line. I mean, they gave Kyle Long the starting right tackle job with little or no experience a week before the regular season opener a couple of years ago. So I think this offensive mindset that they're going forward with Matt Nagy and Mark Helfrich, I think they believe in continuity. They're not. I mean, they're going to be bold in their decision making, but they also believe that sometimes it's best to leave guys in one place. And I think, while John Fox had his arguments to do that, I don't think it was in the best interest for those certain players. We see what happens to Kyle Long. I mean, other than his injuries, he needs to find some consistency there. But in terms of certain players that I think will be really affected, especially up front by this offensive staff, I mean, Herodes Grisou and Mark Helfrich, I mean, that could be he could have like a second – called a second life, I guess. Yeah. This could be a brand new start for him in a sense.
For Grisou, more than anything, it'll be about health too. If he can just stay healthy, I feel like there's still some talent there. And now that he has Helfrich and Harry Highstand to kind of like help him get comfortable, that'll be a big thing.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, Helfrich has his experiences with Grisou going back to Oregon. So, with their scheme changes and what they want to run. So maybe Grisou is your starting center in week one, and Cody Whitehair could go back to left guard, where everybody should remember before Grisou blew out his ACL at that practice at Soldier Field.
Yeah, at the Family Fest.
Yeah. Cody Whitehair was your starting guard, and then Josh Sitton comes in. So things change rather quickly during those couple of weeks. But I think Cody Whitehair is a foundation piece. It's best to find him a spot and keep him there. Now, whether that's center or guard, it remains to be seen. I think he is an interior offensive lineman. I think he was still adjusting to center in his second season doing it. I think you saw that with the snaps. And here's the thing about those snaps too, Robert. Everybody remembers them. But beyond that, they kind of went away by the end of the year. And he was a solid player. He had a solid second season. I think people saw the snaps and think Cody Whitehair was awful. He was not awful. He was still a very effective blocker after that ball was snapped.
Yeah, it was about letting him get comfortable. He finally was entrenched in, and he kind of played back at that 2016 level. Everybody remembered an all-rookie team player. As far as Bobby Massey, I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure if they necessarily need to upgrade him there, but again, it's all about up front. What are your thoughts on, his futures? There might look for a right tackle, but it's not as if it's going to depend on more probably on the draft. I mean, if you look at free agency, not necessarily that there's any bad options, but there's a lot of guys in their early 30s that I'm not sure the Bears would invest in.
Yeah, they looked at possible upgrades last year in free agency. I think you're always going to do that. I'm blanking on the guy's name who they tried to sign, but they got outbid on him.
Rick Wagner.
Yeah, Rick Wagner. Yeah, you got that right. So they got outbid there. They don't want to really break the bank. And look, Bobby Massey, look, when he gets beat bad. We all know that. It looks awful, but it happens to tackles. Tackles are going to lose. And when they lose, it's going to look like the whole house is on fire. That's how bad it looks. Just when a tackle gets beat left or right side, it looks awful because it usually results in a bad sack. But he's still an effective run blocker. He's still an affordable option. You got to consider the contract. For what he's being asked to do and for how much he's getting paid, he's affordable. He's kind of cheap help, and he's not bad help. He's not an awful player.
Yeah.
It's not like having Jamarcus Webb out there again or somebody like that. He is still an effective player. Yes, he's going to get beat, but all tackles get beat. And when they get beat, it looks awful. But he didn't have that bad of a season either. Could have been better, probably. He tends to be a pretty durable player, so that's a positive. He's on the last year of a 3-year contract, and it's an affordable deal. You got to take that into consideration, especially compared to what's available in free agency and then the draft.
All right, last point, kind of circling back before we go to the defense. I'm curious as to why you don't think the Bears – I kind of agree with you, but I do think that an ACL injury isn't necessarily the biggest thing as it used to be, especially with how much recovery time he's going to have by the time camp opens for Cam Meredith. And that kind of goes in line with me with the thought that they don't necessarily need a number one receiver like a Julio Jones or Antonio Brown. That's kind of how the Eagles and Patriots are both built. If anything, the Eagles and Patriots, their number one pass catchers are both tight ends, and Zach Ertz and Adam Shaheen. So if Cam Meredith is 90% of what he was before he tore his ACL in that third preseason game against the Titans this year, that'd be kind of ideal.
Here's my thoughts on Cam Meredith. I think he's a great locker room guy. I think he's a great emerging talent. I think he's only ascending as a player, and I think his torn ACL, I mean, it's a serious setback. He was by far the Bears' best receiver at that point when we went into Tennessee, the third preseason game. He was great since OTAs, and God, you can make an argument, Robert, that if he doesn't tear his ACL, you could have a different story about Mike Glennon and Mr. Trubisky. I mean, that changed so many things about the Bears' offense, and then Kevin White goes down. But Cam Meredith, by far, was the Bears' number one wide receiver. I guess here's my belief on him. I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to be a quality player, but we still don't know what. He's had one good year, right?
And it wasn't always consistent. That's true. Yeah.
Right. You're right. And it took him a while to break out too. And he still had Alshon Jeffrey for some of those games. So you wonder if can he really be a number one guy? And it's okay to have doubts. I think doubts can be beneficial for Cam Meredith. I think that's why he emerged 2 years ago in 2016. I think, look, he is an important piece for the future. There's no doubt about it. He's a restricted free agent who needs a new contract. But I don't want to – I think you can't anoint him as a starter. I don't think you can – just like you can't anoint Kevin White as a starter. You need to really upgrade that position, and I think the Bears have to do it through free agency and the draft. And I think these guys, Cam Meredith specifically, will only be better if you take a guy in the second round of the draft and make them compete. I think it'll make everybody better, and you need that. So while I do believe – like you believe that Cam Meredith is an important player for the future and he's a very capable player, I think you still need to add to it. I think you need to make him compete, and I think the Bears, as an offense, as a whole, will be better off for it. You just can't count on him to repeat 2016 because that was another coaching staff ago. It's a different roster with the different quarterbacks. You just need to see what happens. You need to add to that position.
All right, so just for a recap for everybody, you have to overhaul the receiver position and let Mitch Trubisky develop, which was the second part was we already knew, but receiver that can happen in one offseason. All right, let's move over to the defense, Adam. What has to happen for the Bears to become a championship defense?
Your boy Leonard Floyd needs help. He needs help, and I think you have to do that early on in the draft. I think you get kind of lucky at number 8 there. If there's a run on quarterbacks, I think the Bears should really hope and pray for a run on quarterbacks because you're going to have a lot of good players possibly fall into your wheelhouse. And you could have 2 or 3 of your top targets there to select from at number 8 if there's a run on quarterbacks in front of you. I think there's 4 teams in front of the Bears that need quarterbacks. So you need that to happen. You really need that to happen. They need pass rushers. Again, it's not going to be done in free agency. Yeah, you could add a guy who could come in and maybe get you 6 sacks. But
good pass rushers don't hit free agency.
No, of course they don't. So you need to, just like receiver, you need to spend some money on that position in free agency, and you need to target it in the draft. And I get that you're going to go BPA, but certain positions carry more value. And right now you need to upgrade your pass rush. You have guys settling into other positions. Maybe you spend the money in free agency on Prince Amukamara and Kyle Fuller, bring them back a cornerback, and then you go all out in the draft and find the best pass rushers early on and then late. And then in free agency, you just need help there. Leonard Floyd is really the only building block you have at outside linebacker. I got Willie Young who could be cut, Pernell McPhee who could be cut. Sam Acho was on a 1-year deal. So there could be – that position used to be considered one of the Bears' strongest, and now it is far from that. The only lock you have in returning next year is your guy, Leonard Floyd. Yeah,
and you need youth, too. So you're just mentioning those guys. Those guys are all in their 30s. I mean, there's the question. Lamar Houston might return, if I'm not mistaken, but he's also in his early 30s. You kind of need to invest there. I think an underrated portion, and this is kind of in line with Vic Fangio coming back, a lot of these guys that aren't great players yet growing up. I mean, if we're gonna be in honest, so Akeem Hicks is a great player. I'd consider Danny Trevathan a great player, but Leonard Floyd, Eddie Jackson, these kind of have to get the next step. Every great defense has more than two great players. Like, you have to see them become more comfortable and take that leap beyond being just good. Like, they have to be true game breakers. And I think Fangio coming back helps that along, because they'll be more comfortable, at least in his scheme.
Yeah, you mentioned Fangio, and the only one, the one player that stands out to me with Fangio's return is Kyle Fuller, just in terms of how their relationship was rocky, and it's really smoothed out. They have a bond there. Kyle Fuller, I think, really likes playing for him, but of course, Kyle Fuller, he's like in the Alshon Jeffrey situation from a couple of years ago. Do you franchise tag him? Do you give him a long-term deal? The organization has some doubts about his health and his commitment. I mean, Vic Fangio openly questioned his commitment like a year and a half ago or something like that. So you got to figure out what you're doing and that end. But in terms of, like, you look at Alshon Jeffrey, here's another lesson about if you're looking at the Super Bowl this year. Look, Alshon Jeffrey did not want to be here, but it's still bad business to let your talent walk out the door, even if you're not the general manager who drafted him. Of course, there's reasons why those things happen. And look, clearly Alshon Jeffrey did not want to be here, but you got to find some common ground with Kyle Fuller. He's still a first-round pick of your team. You still need to get the best out of him. He's still a talented player. He had 22 pass breakups last year. He's coming off a great year. Vic Fangio seems to like him. So in terms of Vic, I know he kind of gravitates towards the outside linebackers. We're talking about Leonard Floyd, but to me, when Vic Fangio returned, I think that improved the chances of a Kyle Fuller and even a Prince Umukamara returning to the Bears, because I think both of them like playing in Fangio's defense.
I'll put you on the spot. What odds would you give now of, like, on a scale of 1 to 10 of Fuller returning, and then in what capacity? Is it a franchise tag? Is it a long-term deal? What do you think?
I would say 8.5 that he returns.
8.5 out of 10?
Yeah, I think he.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if, look, cornerbacks always get paid. It all depends on what his agent wants to do and Kyle Fuller wants to do. He did kind of hint that he was excited at testing free agency, but when you have this franchise tag, sometimes it's best to use it. If he still has some interest in returning to the Bears, he said he had some interest. He said he likes playing for Vic Fangio. You got to use that you got to know that. And yes, cornerbacks, again, always get paid on the free agent market. Just look at last year with Stephon Gilmore and A.J. Bowie. Good cornerbacks. Are they Darrelle Revis in his prime?
No.
Definitely not. But you get paid. You need guys to cover, wide receivers. It's a pass-happy league. And, in terms of, like, the best pass rushers, they never hit free agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not until maybe later in their careers or for, odd reasons. But cornerbacks, they always seem to hit free agency. So some pretty good ones. And Kyle Fuller definitely fits that pretty good bill. But you can't let him walk out. $15 million for a franchise tag may sound like a lot. Probably is a lot. But you know what? It's better than investing, $30 million guaranteed in a guy. Might as well make him test it or earn it. Make him earn your trust again. That's what I would do. I would franchise tag Kyle Fuller.
So franchise tag for Fuller, 8.5. Confidence in him returning. Recap. We're talking outside linebacker depth and just in general continuity as far as a championship defense for the Bears. Next point. So the Bears parted away with their former strength and conditioning coach, Nate Bresky. How do you think this will impact the team? Obviously, health and injuries have been a big setback for this team in the last 3 years.
Yeah, parting ways probably puts it lightly. Look, you look at the Bears' injury situation, and yes, maybe it did improve even from a soft tissue standpoint from 2016 to 2017. They didn't have the sheer number that they had the year before, but there was still a considerable number, you still had a lot of guys on IR, and you still had a lot of guys playing through things. And the Bears have more information than we do. And look, I always think that the strength and conditioning coach is more in line with, like, the head coach. So that's why Jason George was definitely not going to return. But all those your strength and conditioning coach, your trainer, all your people in the health science department, they all work hand in hand in maintaining and getting the most out of these players. And look, when you have players going down with we have two linebackers in like back-to-back weeks suffering pectoral injuries like that, you wonder what's going on. You're like, why can't Pernell McPhee stay in the field with all the changes that you made to his diet and his routine and all this? Why can't some of these? What's going on with Willie Young? Why is he breaking down all of a sudden? The durability of some of these guys. Look, I think some players just aren't meant for the rigors of football. It's a violent game.
Yeah,
things are going to add up, but. Like, why is Kyle Long having neck surgery? Like, what is going on? What was missed? What did you ask him to play through? Why can't you stand in front of the player and tell him, look, this is for your own good. Got to get off the field. We don't, So, obviously, the Bears they want to get better. Look, I don't mean to sound like I'm throwing Jason George and Nate Bresky out of the bus, but they would still be here if the Bears were happy with the performance of their athletes. And clearly there are too many injuries going on. Clearly the Bears, I think they have more information. Obviously have more information than us, than what's on their every week injury report. So it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to be really thorough with this process. I don't know. God, it's not like we know who the best, head trainer candidates are out there. I'm sure they'll do their due diligence and really cast the wide net. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, they made a number of changes every single year under John Fox. For 3 consecutive years, injuries were a problem, and they tried to do certain things differently every single year. What's going to be like under Matt Nagy? We don't know. Time will tell, and he's got to get those hires right.
Yeah, that's the most important point you noted, like just a bit earlier, where injuries are going to happen in football either way, but it just seemed to be exacerbated for whatever reason in these last few seasons.
They all got to get on that TB12 plan. Maybe that's
it. Yeah, or Russell Wilson's, what is it, the hydro water, the electrolyte water? I forget what it's called, but apparently
right. More kale chips for the guys and avocado toast, right?
Yeah, that would absolutely work. No tomatoes, so no inflammation, stuff like that. That would. I mean, look at it works for Tom Brady. It works for the Patriots. Hey, if that's a Super Bowl blueprint, right? Maybe the Bears should follow it.
Yeah, right. Got to find some answers. You can't have 38 players or something, nearly 40 players in IR over 2 years. You just can't have that.
Absolutely. All right. So aside from all of that, his staff's now in place. Senior Bowl, all these college all-star games are behind us. Now comes the combine. Now comes free agency, the draft. What's going to be Matt Nagy's greatest challenge with this now?
Well, right now,
okay. So let's say right now, or let's say what it's for him to, end the longest championship drought in Chicago. So let's just do that whole thing, however you want to answer it.
Well, I'm really interested in see what type of offense that he and Mark Helfrich build for Mitch Trubisky. I think they want to be innovative, Robert. They want to do. I don't want to say that like they're going to create a new scheme of things, but it's definitely going to be brand new for the Bears. They want to have college-like concepts. That's why Mark Helfrich is here. They want to have different options, read options, and run pass options for Mitch Trubisky. And then there's going to be some West Coast stuff, the Andy Reid stuff in the system. So I'm really intrigued in terms of what they're going to build for him. And this, I get, will be an evolution. It's going to be like a pass-fail like thing. Some things just won't work for Mitch Trubisky. But you have a special talent who could do a lot of things with his legs, a lot of things on a run. It's going to be quite it's almost refreshing in a sense that the Bears are going down this line, because for so long, maybe it's just the John Fox, 3 years of that being
the new optimism.
Yeah. It's so un-Bears-like too, to be honest with you, to try to be innovative, offensively. I get that you brought Mike Martz in, but his offensive innovation was like years before that with the Rams and with different players, and him trying to implement the same system he ran with the Rams, with the Bears, he just didn't have the players to do it with. He didn't have Isaac Bruce or Torrey Holt, to throw the ball to. You couldn't be, on time with all the passes they wanted to run with Jay Cutler and the 7-step drops and all that. Who was it? Terry Shea, right? The old offensive. Yeah. Look, the Bears for so long have always been like behind the curve offensively. I think you have two young offensive minds now, at least in a coaching sense, who want to be maybe ahead of the curve offensively now. Maybe they want to, maybe the trickle up effect really is true, that a lot of these run pass options will be the new wave, of the future. Maybe every team will start running them, 3 or 4 years from now. And the Bears, they want to be ahead of that. So I'm really, I guess you could say, excited. I'm just intrigued to see what Matt Nagy and Mark Halford. It's just different. It's a different, goal of a team, of the Chicago Bears football team, to have. So I think fans should be excited, intrigued, kind of curious of what they're going to build offensively for Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, and to that point, it's something overall the Bears haven't really done with like Nagy's hire and what they're going to do offensively. You look at the teams that are championship contenders, like the Patriots and the Eagles, particular. They're the ones that have taken the risks. It's the teams that in the past, and the Bears have been one of those teams in the past that have kind of played it safe or been conservative overall. And then there's a reason why you now have a 7-year playoff drought. It's the teams that put themselves out there, and some of them will fail, but the ones that, like in your words, pass fail, the ones that pass are the ones that are playing in January, or the ones that are playing in mid-January, late January, and sometimes even February.
But you look at the Patriots. You have your prototypical drop back quarterback, right? Tom Brady is not a run pass option type of guy, but Bill Belichick has tried to stay ahead of the curve, right? He had Chip Kelly be a consultant, right? He wanted to speed up his offense, they've tried different things. Like they brought back the slot receiver with Wes Welker, right? And getting those type of matchups. They were, remember when they went back to the 2 tight end sets and finding mismatches that way, like bringing Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez and trying to beat teams this way. They may not have the most athletic quarterback anymore, but they've tried to stay ahead of the curve. They have been ahead of the curve offensively in establishing mismatches and finding things that work, whether it's some Chip Kelly-like elements. Well, it's finding that slot receiver, to get open with his quickness over and over and over again, bringing, those guys like back, or having these 2 tight end sets where you can attack teams with speed, power, size, and beat them over the middle, beat these smaller safeties and slower linebackers with these tight ends. They've been so ahead of things offensively that to see the Bears trying to, I don't want to say mimic, but to be creative, to be forward thinking for once, offensively from the get-go with the coaching staff, I think it's quite, again, I use the word intriguing, but it should be exciting for fans.
Absolutely. I think outside of their control, and I was going to kind of mention this, it's obviously very difficult to win the Super Bowl, and in part because of that, you look at the NFC. So if the Bears do indeed make a leap, and if the Bears do indeed become a consistent team that at least hovers around 500 during Trubisky's career, the biggest roadblock to them winning a championship, and even you even look at the NFC landscape next year, it's how many teams already in the conference have a great quarterback, how many teams already have a great nucleus in place, and that's kind of in line with why the parity is why there's so much playoff turnover, why you see the Rams and Eagles coming in this year, because everybody the differences between being a contender and being good is so small, or rather being bad, is so small, because everybody's more or less in line. Everybody's more or less like stuck together based on what they have, because everyone has a good quarterback. Seriously, you look at the NFC North, how difficult of a division that's going to be. You look at the NFC East, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott. We'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins and the Redskins. You look at the NFC West, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff. The NFC South's a gauntlet. Like, more than anything outside of what the Bears do, it'll be about how they can get through that entire obstacle course, which looks incredibly daunting, at least on paper.
Right, but you make a valid point, and Mitch Trubisky, capable quarterback play hides a lot of deficiencies on your roster. So you may have problems on your defense. Next year, maybe Vic Fangio's defense has a whole onslaught of injuries to go through. But a capable quarterback in his second year or beyond that can hide deficiencies. I mean, look at the Saints. Like, they had a couple runs of 7-9, but Drew Brees probably kept them at 7-9. I mean, they were competitive every week. This year was a struggle for the Falcons, in returning to form after last year, with some offensive changes, Kyle Shanahan out and whatnot. But Matt Ryan can keep you afloat. Look at the Lions. If they didn't have Matthew Stafford, that team would be a complete mess, And, of course, the Packers are an obvious example. I mean, they completely change when Aaron Rodgers is out of the lineup. But I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of an exception to the rule of how special he is. Will Mr. Trubisky reach that? We don't know. But you take a number 2 quarterback, you take a quarterback number 2 overall, thinking he can reach a level of that specialness. So, time will tell if that happens. But capable quarterback play, just in general, can hide a lot of deficiencies on your roster and keep you competitive week after week after week. The Bears have a quarterback they believe in. We'll see what happens.
All right, let's change gears. So we've set the blueprint for a Bears eventual maybe Super Bowl run in the future. So let's change gears completely. So there was last week a bill that was in Illinois that was going to be looks to be passed. The Dave Duerson law is what it's called, and where it would be proposed that youth football players in the state wouldn't start playing until they're at least 13, so until they're at least teenagers officially. Obviously, that's in line with a lot of the recent concussion concerns, CTE concerns. The overall future of the game in doubt as parents and as people in the NFL and in the NCAA are concerned with where this is going. What are your thoughts on this specific law, Adam, and how it's going to affect everything?
I don't know if it's a little too early to say if it will pass. There's a long
process. It will pass. Yeah.
There will be some opponents, some staunch arguments against it from a lot of state reps, state senators. There's going to be a lot of people opposed to this law because I think a lot of people don't like too much government injection into their lives. It should be a parent's choice. Even the Sun-Times ran an editorial, and I believe I'm in line with this. It should be a parent's choice in terms of what their kids and cannot do. You can't regulate everything, right? You just can't inject that much government into our lives. So there'll be strong objection to this law, or this proposed law. But here's the thing. Remember, the numbers are already down. The Sun-Times ran a big series on it. The Tribune did a series on it nationally. The numbers are down across the board for football. And in terms of participation, yes, the NFL is still king. Yes, millions upon millions upon millions and millions and millions are going to watch the Super Bowl. They are still the number 1 sport in America. College football is number 2, believe it or not. So football is still king. I think, the stories of its demise, I think, are premature. I think football is going to be here for a long time, but the NFL, college football, Pop Warner, the Chicago Catholic League, whatever you want to call it, we'll have to look closely at the declining enrollment numbers across the board. You have traditional state powerhouses in the Chicago area who are no longer that because kids are no longer playing football in their towns or in their suburbs or in their neighborhoods in Chicago. So that's changing. You're seeing it. There is decline in participation. So, and that starts at the top. I mean, it's on Roger Goodell to make the sport safer, to convince parents that it's okay. But parents have every right to their concerns. I mean, the CTE fears are real. That is hard science. There's only going to be more investigations into things like that. I think the whole NFL, like you look at the movie like Concussion with Will Smith, the cover-up conspiracies, whatever you want to call it, doesn't make the NFL and football look good. But regardless of this law, look, I think it's going to struggle to pass, but it's all part of the growing mindset that football is not safe. And that's why you have decreased participation in the sport. So I don't think it's going away anytime soon, football, but over time, maybe 20 years from now, if we have a conversation about this, it's very different, very different. It could be very different for the NFL at that point. So they have to be, if they want their sport to survive, they got to make some pretty big changes in terms of player safety. And that goes all the way down to the youngest kid who enrolls to play the sport.
Yeah, I'll actually spring this on you because our friend Jack Silverstein, I'm not sure if it's ran yet, but he did a great interview with Olin Kreutz, who is coaching youth football for his son's team. Um, and in there, he talks about how uh, how the NFL is trying to prevent these issues um, is completely misguided. So there's specific points. I'm doing a paraphrase. Um, Trying to tell grown men who have played football this way their entire lives that what they do is wrong. How these blocks they make, like there's a specific reference that Juju Smith-Schuster hit on Monday Night Football in December. You're not going to stop it by telling these guys. You have to work with USA Football in conjunction. You have to ingrain it into these guys that are going to be future NFL players from the very, very beginning.
I just inject. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
It should be like I've sat in on board meetings where the NFL types go around and around and make their arguments about tackling and how they're making their game safer. No, this has to be a grassroots movement. And I've come into I've argued with my colleagues about this, like the Danny Trevathan hit, them calling it dirty and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. These are moving targets, like the helmet to helmet hits. You see it all the time, where they're not hitting someone who's just standing still, right? They're lowering their head. You're lowering your head. The collisions are going to happen. And I feel like defensive players are such a loss right now because they can't hit a darn thing, even when they're doing the right thing and the player lowers his own head, the player who's about to be hit, and there's helmet to helmet contact made, the defensive player is going to be on the receiving end of a fine or suspension, whatever. He's going to be the one who gets criticized on social media for the dirty hit. But
yeah,
it's a fast game. It's an emotional game. These players are moving. They are not stationary, and that changes contact points in so many ways. Like I played it. I've had my bell rung. I've had helmet to helmet hits. You know why? Because it's contact sport. You're going to get hit. You can't take the violence out of a violent sport. It's just too much of its nature. It's part of football. The violence is part of football. But if you want to teach safer tackling techniques, if you want to teach a greater respect for players, if you want them to be more aware, like these messages that you have growing up as a kid playing football, to go clean somebody's clock, when you get your bell rung, walk it off, stuff like that. That all has to change at the youngest of levels, like you still see it now. You go to like Bleacher Report on Instagram or Barstool Sports on Instagram, any little, House of Highlights on Instagram, whatever. You got these little kids, taking out these other little kids and big hits, and everybody's going nuts. Everybody's, woohooing and stuff like that. That's what's got to change, that mindset, right? Of those big, depleting, violent, impactful hits that everyone tries to make as a defensive player or as a fullback or as a pancake blocking lineman. They happen, and maybe the celebration and maybe the goal of them at the youth level, the elimination of that's where you start making the football, your sport of football, a safer sport.
Yeah, and if anything, it's that acceptance too, that you don't glorify it, and to your point, at some point you can only legislate it so far. Like you let like parents will either accept letting their kids play or they won't, and that's kind of how the future of the sport will go in line with that. Okay, so we have a little heavy-handed conversation there. Again, switching gears before we start wrapping up a few more topics, Adam. So as far as the other head coaching gaps filled across the league. So I just wanted to get your general thoughts on each one. So I'll just go on down the line. And then I mean, which one excites you? Which one intrigues you the most? I mean, just whatever comes to mind. Let me just blurt it out.
Well, I think everybody's going to look at the Colts situation and Josh McDaniels, right? As kind of the measuring stick for what the Bears do. I can tell you that the Bears and Josh McDaniels, they hit it off actually quite nicely. Now, they weren't as familiar with McDaniels as maybe a Chris Ballard was, but the whole Matt Nagy, Chris Ballard connection from the Chiefs days and how the Bears jumped on Nagy right away, and how Nagy, was kind of torn on the Colts and the whole Andrew Luck situation. And that's the team I'm interested in seeing how things unfold. I think Josh McDaniels has learned a lot since his failures with the Denver Broncos, his first run as a head coach. I think he is a better coach because of it. I think he has evolved too in terms of techniques since then. But who is his quarterback going to be? Is Andrew Luck really going to be Andrew Luck again? Even if he does return, like, what's he going to be? He's been out of football for so long. I get that Andrew Luck was a special quarterback, but he didn't play at all this year. And there's still doubts about his shoulder. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Matt Patricia up in Detroit is interesting because, you got Matthew Stafford returning and, they need to improve their defense. But whatever. The Colts, Josh McDaniels, and what happens there just because of the whole Matt Nagy connections with Chris Ballard and the quarterback connections, just all of that, to me, stands out as a measuring stick for the Bears, in terms of this hiring process.
Yeah. McDaniels was apparently impressed by Ryan. Was the word right? That's what in particular why they hit it off? If I remember correctly? Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the Bears, their coaching search ended within a week. Yeah, within a week, since firing John Fox, the Colts haven't even they can't officially name McDaniels. Yeah. So the Bears are already ahead in terms of finding staff and whatnot. I'm sure McDaniels will bring in some quality coaches, to have at his side. But look, we're still waiting for the first Bill Belichick disciple to have a lot of success. Bill O'Brien may be the most successful one right now, but even that has been a roller coaster ride down there in Houston. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's my measuring stick, the Colts, for sure.
Well, aside from the measuring stick, then, because you kind of touched on Patricia, he's a Belichick disciple. Since the Lions are more immediately relevant, at least in terms of being in the Bears' way of being contenders. I mean, what do you think of Matt Patricia? As the Lions head guy, they have to fix their defense. They have Matthew Stafford, obviously, but like, he's inexperienced, so he's kind of like the McDaniels now. Even while he's older, getting this first gig, this is his first experience.
Yeah, I've heard from people that of all the candidates, Patricia might be the most Bill Belichickian of them all, and it's more than just having expertise on the defensive side of the ball. Just in terms of how he views the sport. And I think, well, obviously he's come up through Belichick, of course. So he's a complete disciple of his. I mean, this isn't like a Romeo Crennel. I mean, Patricia literally evolved coaching-wise under Belichick. So he's getting a pretty good team, too. I mean, he's going into an organization where he knows the GM quite well because of their connection back to New England, and you have a quarterback already. You have a number 1 overall pick as your quarterback who has had Pro Bowl seasons, who has good receivers, who may need help at running back, but you have some things already in place. You just got to improve that defense, maybe change the mindset and philosophies of your team overall after Jim Caldwell. But it's a good situation to be walking into, that's for sure.
Well, I think this is a very relevant point. Will ultimately determine his success is whether he keeps that beard. Have you seen that picture of him without a beard?
No. How young does he look?
It shaves off maybe 20 years. Like, you can't recognize him. Like, Google Matt Patricia just for your own sake, for your own entertainment's sake. Like, you won't be able to recognize him. Like, you'll legitimately like wonder like if that's the same person. It's crazy.
Well, Bob Quinn doesn't exactly look that old himself. I mean, from a guy who has a baby face, I have a baby face.
Yeah, I have one too. I know.
Yeah, so Bob Quinn, their Lions GM, he's all of 41, 42 years old. He looks quite young too. So maybe he should to get in line with the Lions.
Yeah, definitely. All right, one last point, and we'll get your Super Bowl pick, and then kind of wrap this up. So, the only we've been discussing a Bears blueprint for a Super Bowl, but there isn't any actual tangible Bears news otherwise, aside from Brian Urlacher's first ballot Hall of Fame candidacy being up on Saturday, and we'll officially know once once Saturday's up and will be announced at NFL Awards Show. I'm gonna guess easily here that you believe he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So unless I'm mistaken, and if so, why? Make your case.
Well, I think the numbers speak for themselves. I think his impact on the Bears speaks for itself. I like looking at first ballot, Hall of Famers. Look, I don't have a vote. The Chicago vote is held by Dan Pompei, the Hall of Fame writer himself, who is now with Bleacher Report and The Athletic, but he, former Sun-Times guy, former Tribune guy. So he holds the Chicago vote, and I think it's going to be on him to really state his case. But I like looking at first ballot guys as players who change the game, who transcend the game in many aspects. And at least in Chicago, Brian Urlacher did that. You look at that list, to me, I would vote in Randy Moss. I would vote in Ray Lewis. I would vote in Terrell Owens. After that, of course, I think Urlacher is aligned with those three. So, maybe the fifth is more up for debate, especially beyond those guys. But again, I wouldn't be. I mean, Terrell Owens didn't get in. I mean, some guys just have to wait. So I know there's some debate on social media. There's some buzz that maybe Urlacher doesn't get in. I think it would be a shame. Now, he wouldn't be the first to have to wait 1 or 2 years. I mean, he's going to get in. He's a Hall of Fame player.
He's absolutely going to get in, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's either this year or next year or 2 years from now. I don't think Ray Lewis's candidacy should deter anyone from voting for Brian Urlacher, but for some people, maybe it will. But look, Terrell Owens is like, what, number 2 all time in receptions or something like that? Like his numbers are gaudy, and for some reason he has to wait. So, look, you have writers from all over the country voting for guys for various reasons, and maybe John Lynch, for example, gets in this year. We'll see what happens. I think he gets in. Would it shock me if he doesn't? I guess not, but it would be a shame.
I guess that's, and I don't know how overall the thought process works. I guess that's kind of what bothers me, because like with Owens didn't get in last year, and then now he has to go up against Randy Moss. So I think most people, I would consider Randy Moss a better receiver who had a better career than Owens. So that they don't put in 2 guys at the same position. I think that's the biggest. Like you just kind of said it, like it shouldn't deter Urlacher from getting in this year because Ray Lewis is also eligible. But for a lot of people, it will, because they don't want to put in 2 guys the same position, especially in the first ballot or on the ballot altogether. I think it depends on a lot of the politics in that voting room, essentially. I mean, if we're going off of what you said, like changing the game, like Urlacher was kind of that first, like really, or like generational cover 2 linebacker, the guy that could cover the middle of the field by himself and then also go from sideline to sideline, tackling running backs and otherwise, and covering tight ends, whatever else. He's kind of the guy that's like the template for players now, such as Luke Kuechly. To this,
yeah, good example.
Even with Urlacher retiring now, like I still haven't seen a better linebacker of his kind of template. So it shouldn't deter it, but it's good. But it'll be like the positions that seems like the biggest factor for me. That they don't want to put in 2 players at the same position.
Yeah, and look, you got guys too, like John Lynch. This is his 5th time, I think 5th consecutive year. He's a finalist. Who else do you have?
You have
Edgerrin James. He's been a finalist a couple of times.
Ty Law.
Yeah, Isaac Bruce has been a finalist a couple of years in a row. So Tony Baselli, right? A couple of years in a row.
I think he's like a legacy candidate at this point because he retired in 2001. So Baselli's like a legacy candidate. Some of these guys have been waiting forever.
Yeah. So look, you never know how the voters are going to feel just because you feel one way. I think this happens like a lot, like in Chicago, of course, Brian Urlacher, we remember him for what he was as a special player because we saw every one of his games. But a lot of these voters did not. And I like the way the NFL does it compared to, some of these other major leagues, especially baseball. I think the NFL has a better process. I like that they're willing to debate. I like that they go hours upon hours upon hours during debate. I like how they all gather in a room and argue about this. I think that's a great way to do it. I think it speaks to the reporter's passion. It speaks to to the value of debate. There are so many good. It's just a lot better than the baseball selection process. But you don't know, like, maybe some people will walk in there 50-50. They'll hear a good argument and, he's in. Maybe they'll hear something they don't like, like you get testimonials from players too, speaking about these guys. So it'll be interesting, when some of the testimonials for sure will be like from Aaron Rodgers and from Brett Favre, right? The Packers quarterbacks, when they start speaking glowingly of
yeah, that'll help him.
Brian Urlacher, I think that'll help, but we'll see. I think he should be in. He should be a first ballot guy, but you just never know.
Absolutely. Adam, 2 like mailbag questions that I've picked out here before you get your Super Bowl pick. So do you have right now like a favorite that you'd like to see the Bears get at number 8? Do you have a guy you kind of have in mind or have started to think about that would be the perfect fit or like the ideal fit regardless of draft position or whatever else? Is there someone that you've kind of like started to zero in on?
Yes. Well, I guess there's 2. I'm a firm believer in building up front, and I think there is like a stacking of positions that have more value than others, right? I don't think number 8's a great place to take a Calvin Ridley. I don't. I really don't. I think the value for the position is much later than that. I think you have to build up front. So Quentin Nelson, the Notre Dame guard, stands out to me. Bradley Chubb, the outside linebacker from NC State, the pass rusher, he stands out to me. So even if one of those 2 guys are there, I think you're sprinting to get that pick, and you're so happy. You might have a tough choice between them. I think the Bears would love to have that. And to me, I may take the pass rusher over the guard if that comes to be, even though I think Quentin Nelson could be a very special player. But you build up front. You get the big boys, and then you add the talents around them later. You got to win the line of scrimmage before you can throw the ball.
And then it's kind of a joke question, but I mean, I guess we can answer it seriously. What will the Bears need to do over the next 84 years to attempt to regain the lead in the Bears-Packers all-time series?
Well, you know what? They need Aaron Rodgers to keep getting hurt. Maybe that'll help. Look, Mitch Trubisky is supposed to be the equalizer. He really is. He's supposed to be their answer to Aaron Rodgers. He is supposed to bring balance to the force. that has changed. Look, the Bears wasn't that long ago. I guess it was kind of long ago if you think about it.
It was long ago now. It's been a few decades.
Yeah, where the Bears had the advantage, but Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers come in, and the Packers they've had a run, and it all starts at the quarterback position, and the Bears have had countless quarterbacks in between. We've all seen the graphics on TV, right? There's been so many guys. Well, they've had 2. So maybe Mitch Trubisky, he brings balance to the force if you're a Star Wars fan.
Hopefully.
And, you get some consistency. Look, for all his faults, Jay Cutler brought some consistency. Like he stabilized the position that needed it.
He wasn't great, but he was an entrenched starter that they didn't have.
Yeah, but it still wasn't enough, right? For obvious reasons. He suffered numerous injuries. You changed offensive coordinators on him like every single year. You never got him a number 1 receiver until Phil Emery got here. So obviously different philosophies than the Packers, but yeah, it's all Mr. Trubisky. We all know that.
I'll add this. Never mind. I don't know if you have a rooting interest, White Sox or Cubs. I guess they're asking me too, so I don't know. I don't really count myself as either, but if I did have to pick one, probably the White Sox. I don't know if that's like bad for you. So
I'm a North Sider.
Of course. Oh, okay.
Of course, it's the Cubs. No debate whatsoever. It's all.
I'm not that invested, so I'm not gonna disparage you, or I'm not gonna like, oh my God, Adam, how could you? And so it's totally fine. All right, so let's get your Super Bowl pick and then wrap this bad boy up. Alshon Jeffrey going for his first ring for Bears fans.
He can make good on his
guarantee. Yeah, kind of guarantee. He was still never the Bears, but it counts.
Yeah, right. He was definitely referencing the Bears when he made. I was literally right next to him.
Clearly, we're gonna win it with Jay Cutler, who is definitely gonna come back. I believe that comment was made on New Year's Day, so it's gonna be with Jay Cutler. It's gonna happen. Yeah.
But I don't think he gets it.
You don't think he gets it? Okay.
How can you pick against the Patriots? I don't know how you can. Nick Foles, great story. If Carson Wentz is playing this game, I would have picked the Eagles. 100% would pick the Eagles.
Yeah.
I think the Patriots they're not as impenetrable as as have been. But look, if anybody's going to have a storybook ending with their two coordinators leaving and all that stuff, it's going to be the Patriots. Give me them. God, they always play these Super Bowls tight.
Yeah, so it'll be close. The Eagles have a shot. The Brady Patriots have never been involved in a Super Bowl that was a blowout. I mean, they've all been decided by one score.
Yeah, so I would even say maybe 30-24 Patriots.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to see the Eagles get it, and for a little bit of a breath of fresh air, I have to agree with you. Something like probably Patriots 24-21. That seems to be like a common score for them. Yeah. Something by a field goal.
Either way, Robert, Philadelphia will burn.
Philadelphia will. Oh yeah, that's true.
Either way.
Either way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not think about that. Let's think about the good people of Philadelphia celebrating a burning that's like more of a celebration, if anything. Oh man, I don't even want to think about that. That's gonna be. I don't even want to think about like social media will be like with Adam. I'm legitimately afraid for that city now. Okay, let's wrap this up. All right, this has been Windy City Gridiron Radio of WindyCityGridiron.com. Adam, thanks for hopping on. This is Adam Jahns. You can follow him. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with him. He's the Bears beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times. You can follow him on Twitter in case you don't already. Does great work. At Adam Jahns. Excuse me. And keep in line with him as we get into the combine season and the draft season, acquisition part of the year. And then, as always, follow us on Twitter at WC Gridiron. Follow me on Twitter at Robert Zuklitsky. Follow along with our work in that respect as we see the Bears maybe get back to relevance. Thanks, everybody, for hopping on with us. Thanks, for everybody, for listening in. And as always, stay classic.